Hi everyone, this is Mel from Howzit, and today we have got a great person on our video. And welcome to Andrea. It's nice to have you again.
Hey, awesome. Thank you, Mel. It's great to chat to you. I wish I could actually have you in person. Can't wait to have this COVID-19 thing over. But yeah, thank you for having me.
It's gonna be over before we think about it. So we look forward to seeing everybody, hugging everyone. If you're a hugger,
Oh, I
we're looking
am.
forward to that. Absolutely,
Absolutely. Hug and
yeah.
coffee. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So we've had the great privilege having you on our show, on the podcast a few weeks ago. And we've come up and said that there's a couple of questions. But before we get into those questions that we'd love you to answer, and that's why we've invited you back, is to tell us a bit more about yourself. You are called a South African Girl in Canada on YouTube. And it's just been great following your stories and telling people about your experience in Canada. For those that haven't followed any of your YouTube yet, go and follow her and check. But tell us a bit more about yourself.
Um, well, I guess, I was just thinking about it the other day. We've been in Canada for nearly 3.5 years. And I wonder at what point I'm going to change my logo, because what happens when I become a citizen? Am I still going to be the South African girl living in Canada? Of course I am. I'll always be South African in my heart. And I guess it's always that thing about the African soil. You can never get it out of your shoes. That kind of the heart and the drum beats of Africa never leaves you. So yeah, I am the South African girl. And I think initially I got started just doing my YouTube channel and my blog to help other people. I have lived through the experience, and my sole purpose was to give tips, advice. I'm a serious networker, love to put people together. And when I realized that there were so many people out there looking at all these different Facebook platforms, asking the same old questions, I thought, you know what, let me just put this onto YouTube. And I did it, and it's been super successful. I get great feedback, and I just love what I do. I love it.
It's great. The feedback that you are getting, that we're seeing, is fantastic. And it's great to kind of get the right advice, because there's so much around it. People would love to hear from experience. That's what makes it great, is, don't make the same mistakes as what I've made. This is what I've learned. This is a tip. This is where to go. That's the kind of thing that people want to hear. And that's what you share on your YouTube channel, which is fantastic.
Exactly. Cool. Thanks.
So we're gonna go straight into some of the questions. I'm gonna quickly tell you about what we are going to talk about today. So the questions that you get asked the most often are these 5, and we're gonna tackle them one by one briefly. So it starts around like, where do we live in Canada? If in terms of location, what neighborhoods for Toronto? You are and I are based in Toronto.
Yeah.
Schooling systems in Canada, jobs in Canada, and then finally that dreaded old resume, CV, Canadian conversion thing. So that's what we're going to cover for the listeners and watchers. Keep on listening as we go through these questions. I'm going to shoot up and ask you around where to live in Canada. If your concern is really, most of the questions when people start out to saying Canada is big, it is enormous. So
exactly.
If you listen to, there was a podcast that I did with Hitty and Gerard Grieve, and what they were mentioning is when they drove into Toronto, they drove for 2 days and they were still in Toronto. So, or in Ontario rather, so it's a big place. So people kind of go, yes. Where do I stay? Do I start BC? Do I look, what's your answer to that?
Oh, yeah, it definitely is like the top number one question. And I really think, if I think about Kevin and I, when we moved here with the girls, he had a job where he worked in downtown Toronto, but he had the ability to also work from home every now and then. So then the world is your oyster. Well, in terms of the GTA, where are you going to stay? Should I live in downtown Toronto? Should I move out to the east or the west? And I think the biggest thing is, I always say, if you have a job already and you're coming over, stay as close to your job as possible. So live close to where it's easy to commute to your job. Otherwise, you're going to be spending hours commuting in traffic all the time trying to get to where you need to be. And the other thing is also, we just found out that there were a lot of South Africans living in Oakville. And so there was a whole reason why we went as well. My daughter used to play field hockey, and the Halton region offered great field hockey. And of course, we did what we wanted for our kids. But in saying that, there are the most beautiful places all over. And I know that you've got a blog. You've written a whole thing on Peterborough. There's Milton. There's Guelph. on the Howzit platform. Go and have a look at that. Those articles are fantastic. And I think there's no reason why we should be biased. There's so many places to look at. And that also reminds me, the other thing I tell people a lot is housing in Oakville is super expensive. So if you're looking to buy or even rent, it becomes really expensive. So maybe it depends on your pocket as well in terms of where you're going to live. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Mel. If you've heard of people talking about buying houses, I might not necessarily suggest Oakville if that's not within their price range.
I think if you're looking at BC and Toronto, those are the most expensive cities. Really, it's excessive in terms of affordability. So for me, it would be that start out in the smaller towns if you can. The reality of moving into either BC or Toronto would be that if you are within an hour's distance, traveling distance, you are okay, because that's give or take 40 minutes to an hour is give or take that you travel. To give you an indication, if you travel from Oakville GO station into downtown Toronto, that would take you 40 minutes. Okay, right. Depending on which train you take in the morning and the afternoon, if it's the fast train, but it takes 40 minutes. I live in downtown Toronto, and for me to get from where I live into the city where the job would be, that takes 30 minutes. So it's a 10-minute difference. So whether you stay downtown or a little bit further out, you would find if it's still acceptable within an hour's transport. The same thing is in BC. And again, it's quite logic. The further you go out of the city, the cheaper the rate becomes. And right. If you are looking at then, let's say Oakville specifically, the affordability where you've got Milton sitting right next to Oakville, it's a little bit more of a farming community. If you love horse riding, that's the kind of place that you would want to live in. That's about 15 minutes difference in terms of distance. But again, also about the transport's not as easily accessible when you live in, when you work in Toronto. And then next to Milton, you've got Georgetown. Georgetown, Campbellville. It's spectacular in terms of you want the outdoor.
I love Georgetown.
It is just the most spectacular. But then I would consider those places because they become a bit more affordable. But then it depends if you have to travel in. If it's traveling once a week into downtown, yes, it's doable. If you travel in every day, I don't know if you would want to live in a little place like Campbellville. Or going closer to the mountains where you can ski. Yes. So that would be, if we look at where to live, I agree with you. Kind of start with where the jobs are. If you are IT related, then you would live close to a city like BC or Toronto or things like that. If it is more a farming job, it would be, Saskatchewan or those kind of places. So it would start narrowing in the moment that where do you qualify. If you know it's not as much of where do I start looking for a place, it is more where can I find a job and where do I qualify. So how do you know where you qualify? So if you go through that whole process of finding out, do I qualify to work in BC or do I qualify to work XYZ? And that's when you understand the process of knowing how to narrow that down.
Totally. No, I think that's the point.
Yeah, and then if you go down to the neighborhood specifically, so if we look at, you guys chose Oakville. And we spoke briefly around. You chose Oakville. There's Milton there. There's Georgetown. That's in Toronto itself. Campbellville I've mentioned. Orangeville is also pretty. So those are all within about an hour's distance of Toronto. You can look at, if you're looking into town. Where are the South Africans? What was your experience? Because you've got quite an interesting story around that.
Yeah, I think also there's another thing that I've got some friends who started a cosmetics company, and the owner is a South African guy. He's Jewish, and he lives in Thornhill. And they were telling me there's a massive Jewish community in the Thornhill, Markham kind of area. So it's also nice. So within the South African community, we have Jewish South African little pockets here and there, which is so nice to know. So I think everywhere you're going to find your South Africans. I've seen on the different Facebook forums and things that there are little hangouts that happen everywhere. I've got friends in Halifax and they will find South Africans, but I don't know. I believe there is a majority of them sitting in Oakville, and I don't know if it's close to some form of boerewors at Florence Meats, or what it is, but
I
maybe
think
it's the
so,
big
yeah.
open skies. I don't know, that gives you that kind of South African feel. I don't know, maybe it's very Cape Town as well for me, but I will say that the downtown vibe, there is another, the downtown vibe is contagious and beautiful. And I always think if you've come so far, you've literally packed your house up, you've moved all the way across the waters, you've come to Canada, maybe this is your opportunity to just do something completely different and hit downtown,
Absolutely.
stay in an apartment, check out the vibe, go downstairs, have a Starbucks, walk your dog, live in a city environment where it's pretty much safe and you can enjoy it. So there is that completely off the wall answer as well that I give people, because you're change fit. While you're moving, do something different. Experience
Absolutely. I think that you hit the nail on the head there with the thing is that once you've moved countries, don't worry too much where you start at, because you most likely will find after a year or so you kind of resettle in any case, because then you've picked out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. So don't be too hard on saying this is going to be my forever home and suddenly stressing that you're sitting in South Africa and thinking I need to move home. Kind of get a place, settle in. If you need to move your kids, kids are resilient. Don't stress too much about that. If being around a community is important to you, then find out where that community is lying. That would be important. It was for me, but as you say, we've moved down to downtown, and the vibe is incredible. Close to the beach. Experiencing it, it's fantastic. It really is just a great.
I'm a little
vibe
bit
around.
Jealous, Mel. I'm coming to you.
Sorry.
So nice.
Just having the
nice.
best of all of it. So it's
love
been great.
it.
We love it. But so that brings us up to in terms of the schooling system in Canada. Okay. Do the kids have to repeat their classes if you're coming in? What's going to happen with them? How do they adjust? What's your experience been around that?
I think that, I understand. Parents are seriously panicking around their kids and schooling. They don't understand the Canadian school system. It's super overwhelming because also you're trawling through the websites and you're trying to figure out how it works. And I think what is cool is I've got a blog called justmyscene.com. I'm going to probably publish in the next few days. There will be an article there about 6 things you should know about schooling in Canada, all the way from kindergarten to high school, and that pretty much covers everything. I've also got a YouTube video on that specific same thing, so go and have a look at that. It'll give you great detail. But I think really understanding that there is a public schooling system, there's a private schooling system, and within the public schooling system we have a French track, or French immersion they call it, or the standard English track schooling system. We have a Catholic schooling system. And then the last one would be homeschooling, which is completely legal, and a lot of people homeschool their kids. In terms of the public schooling system, it's like the 10th best schooling system in the world. I think we were ranked number 7 last year. And in my blog, I give you the ranked listings and stuff. It's really cool. My kids have exceeded their expectations in terms of their schooling here versus South Africa. Are your kids going to adjust? Are they at the same level as Canadian kids? Well, I'll give you one little teaser. Do you know that kids start school at the age of 4 in Canada? And it's a lot younger than kids starting school in South Africa. And so parents are freaking out, like, oh my word, my kids can't read and they're 4. So I give you in my blog and on my YouTube video all the tips on how to get up to speed. But please, parents, don't panic. I think the answer is thousands of kids have transitioned into the Canadian schooling system without a hitch. Don't worry about it. They are going to be okay. Kids don't break. They are amazing. I think the big thing for parents to know, especially about schooling, is that they're going to need your support. Yes, they're going to be challenges, but just know that in the end, it always works out. And I think one of the big drives, I don't know if you've picked this up, Mel, in the schools here, and specifically the teachers, they want your kids to succeed. There's a big drive towards it. There's no failing. It's like, how can we help you help your children to be the best that they can be? I think that's how I feel about the schooling system. I'm very excited about it. I don't know if I've fully answered that question. If there's anything else that we need to add.
For me, my experience was very similar to yours. My kids are also in a government school, and they are so here's my experience. They are in Toronto. They're in a little school with only 300 kids. So for a
Wow.
primary school, it's been fantastic. The how it would work, I'm sure you talk about it in your blog that's going to come out. But how it would work is when the parents ask us, we get the same question at Howzit a lot, is would my kid go to the next level, or what they would do is when you come in, especially in the Halton district and in the Toronto district, it might work slightly different, but I think it's very similar across the board in Canada, is they will come into the district where you would fall in, which is you will always fall into the closest area where you live. You would go to that school, but you will go into the district. They will then assess your child, and it's not a hectic assessment. It is an assessment just to understand their level of understanding. And that level of understanding would not to say, would your kid go into a lower grade or higher grade? The typical thing is that they are graded according to age. So your child would be in that age group. They try and keep that in. It would be more around how much assistance would your child require to be able to function optimally. So what that would mean is they pick up certain things like when your child is, for instance, only in Afrikaans and you're moving over, how difficult would it be for them to be able to get the right tuition in the school? Do they need an assistant full-time? And that is what they give, because understand that in Canada, 50% of the people in Canada are immigrants. And many of the people, we've had this experience, many of them cannot speak English when they come into the school. So at least in South Africa, our kids would understand a level of English because they've heard that. So from an Afrikaans person, my experience was my kids were in Afrikaans school, but they could understand English. They assisted them through the program completely, and they reassessed them continually throughout the schooling system, throughout the first year, to see if they're on the right level. And only once they decided that they don't need that additional assistance, were they okay. So it's not that your child will be held back. Your child would rather be given more assistance to be able to get them to be on that level. And they go above and beyond. And that would be the one thing that I would say is I'm sure that there are many parents that's got their kids in a private school at the moment in South Africa, and you're asking, can my kids adopt in a government school? This is not a legal opinion, and this is my personal opinion. I think yes, they would absolutely adopt into that. They would fit in easier. Understand the values and principles might be different. Because there's no, if you're a Christian, there's no Christian schooling in the government schools. If that is really a big concern, you might want to look at private Christian schools, which there are in Canada all around. That is a question that I think takes a little bit more thinking about and knowing, and it's expensive, so that might take a bit more investigating. We've got a blog on where one of the moms spoke. She put her kids in a private Christian school, and how well that's worked for them. If it's not too much of a concern, the kids in Canada are cool kids. They are, for most of it, they're respectful. Okay, so you would find your kids would be okay in a government school, I would say. And the last thing I want to mention about that would be the French immersion schools, or the Catholic schools rather. Your children, if you come to a Catholic school, the primary grades, so that would be from JK right up to when they go to high school. Grade 8. Those would be, you need to be Catholic, and there's certain regulations around that to be able to put your kid in a Catholic school. Whereas if you want to go Catholic high school, they've got the option. There's no restrictions in terms of that. So, but I'm sure that you cover that in your blog in any case, and there's lots of information out there.
Absolutely. And I think just another point to add that I covered, because it has this very special place in my heart, is what is the support for special needs children in mainstream schools?
Oh, wow.
And and I've got two friends. One is South African. She lives in Halifax. Her daughter is 8 and she's Down syndrome. So I give all the details in terms of how life works around that gorgeous little body. And so other parents who have special needs children, either on the autism spectrum or whatever, can maybe look at that. And then my other friend, Carolyn, lives in Oakville. Her daughter's now 19, and she is wheelchair bound. She's on the autism spectrum. She is nonverbal, and she's fed with a G tube, and she's epileptic as well. So a child like that, how does that work in terms of wheelchair buses? How do nurses work? How do your kids go to school? Who looks after them? And so There's a lot of tips and advice specifically with regards to special needs. In Canada, there's funding that you can access. There's respite camps, respite care. All that stuff is listed on my blog and on specifically on the blog, yes. So what is amazing is you just cannot believe how amazing the care is in Canada in terms of that. And especially, I think just a quick note is, and I think that's for all parents as well, is that when you come to Canada, for the first 3 months, you do not have medical insurance. So even if you don't have a special needs child and your kids maybe have allergies and things like that, please make sure that you bring all your stuff with you. I try and tell parents all the time, bring everything, medication, gloves, masks. Stuff breaks and it can run up huge bills until you can access OHIP, which is the health insurance here in Canada, government health insurance, or until you can access funds. And so that would be important. And the other thing for parents, talking about schooling, please get up to date with your immunization records while you're still in South Africa or in your country. Make sure that you check box all that. I promise you, I'm sure you know, your immunization records you use all the way to high school. And it's very important to allow access for your kids to go to school.
It is. So it's critical to bring that along. Just one thing to note around the OHIP is that is specifically based around Ontario. So if you are going to BC, if you're going to BC, those rules would be different. You know, some places you are covered immediately, but it is good. You get insurance to cover you for the 3 months that you are not covered if you're coming to Ontario specific. You know, and so just kind of be aware around that. But I agree with you fully and around bringing the medication along. It's great. From the schooling for special needs children, I've seen it myself where the way that they integrate the children into the schools, what it's done, which is fantastic, is that the kids have got a great respect for the other kids because they understand a little bit more of what they're going through. They've got, depending on you know, the level of assistance that they would need. Some of them have got dedicated people that assist just those children, but they try and integrate them as much as they can. It's brought to my kids, it's brought that compassion to see these kids, to help them to, you know, and for those children to feel part of the community. So it's been positive all around. I love the fact that they have
it like makes my heart burst because like for this little girl that has Down syndrome, the teacher read a book about Down syndrome to the rest of the kids, and so they understand what she's going through and how she is, and it's really amazing.
It's been great. So yeah, it's fantastic. I think just the kid, as you said in the beginning, don't stress about it. Your kid's not going to have to redo his year. He's
Definitely
not going to be. They adjust almost immediately. There are challenges in certain cases, but most of them have been good. And I can tell you, if your child needs support, they will get the support. I think one of the biggest things for me is that Canada is all about making sure your child is a well-rounded child. Yes. So it's not just academic, it's not just sport, it's not just one, but it's all round, you know, making sure it's good kids. So I think you would find it, it might not be exactly to what you would want, but I would tell you it's been great. So great experience. Fantastic. Don't stress about it, parents. It works well.
Don't panic.
So, yes, exactly. So job opportunities in Canada. This is an interesting one. I'm sure you get that often. What can we say about what job opportunities are there in Canada and how do I access those job opportunities?
Don't ask me. I don't know anybody. I can't help you. No, you know what? It's just like everybody asks us that question. And you know what? I understand. You are in South Africa. You want to come to Canada and it's like this internal dream. And like people, they're like, oh my word, all I want to do is just get to Canada. You know, I don't know about you, Mel, but if you think about it, COVID-19 has changed the face of the world and how we do things. So yes, there are jobs available in Canada, but I think right now, at least for the next 9 months, it's not going to happen. Canada is going to look for people in Canada. It's going to be hard to find somebody in another country and bring them over. So I think just from a common sense point of view right now, that's the big number one. The other one is there are lots of job opportunities in Canada. It's really difficult for somebody sitting in South Africa to apply for all of these jobs when perhaps they don't actually have a resume, or you call it a CV in South Africa, that is applicable. So what I mean by that is that Your CV is a South African CV, and I promise you guys, trust me on this, it's completely different in Canada. The words people use in Canada, how they put resumes together. And Mel, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but it's a very big thing. If that thing, there's really no point. It's like firing into the sky with I don't know what. You can't like do this thing without a proper resume. And you're really shooting yourself in the foot if you're going to start the process with something that people are not even going to look at, or that won't be generated correctly through computer systems, which is how they do it nowadays.
Exactly. We've had, there's a great podcast we have got someone within the Howzit platform that converts people's resumes. So my
is that Simeon?
is, yes, that's Simeon.
Okay,
And he's been great, and he's helped many South Africans changing their resume. And here's the thing, he mentioned that was that the words that in South Africa that you are using would be different than what you are using here. If I can recall from the podcast that he spoke about, where he said that it was, for instance, it was the person kept on calling himself, X in terms of what job he does. And when he looked at that, he said, hold on, but you're actually a personal assistant. Now, if you look at a personal assistant in South Africa, it's a PA or a secretary. But here, right. Personal assistant might mean something different. We personally had the experience as well, where we had the same thing. You couldn't find a job because it just doesn't fit with each other. But it's because the wording is different. So if you start changing the keywords in, you'll be picked up. Big thing here in Canada, there's two big things. LinkedIn is massive. So you need to know that your profile needs to be on LinkedIn, because that's how they're going to find you. Networking is the other one. So if you get those 2 points, those are the important things to start networking and start getting and finding out where the jobs are, because many of them are not necessarily advertised on the standard platforms like we would as South Africans be used to. Yes. Here, if you apply for a job, the automated systems that they are using, most of the companies are using automated systems that pick up those keywords. If you feature for the wrong keywords, you're going to be at the bottom of that pile all the time.
Yeah, it makes no point.
Featured. So that's when it says, let's have a look at that resume, let's have a look at that cover letter. So it would be worth your money. Having a resume done for yourself would cost some money to have it done through a professional. Yeah. It is worth every single cent of that. That will be able to give you the job opportunities. Again, as you said, it might be a different perspective in terms of finding the job opportunities in Canada right now, because you cannot fly in. It's going to make no sense for people to interview you to try and get you a job when you cannot land here for the next 3 to 6 months. So people are going to look at people here. What's my recommendation on that? Here's the one thing I would say that I've said to a couple of people that asked me the same question is, go and have a look. If you get your resume, you know what keywords to feature for, and you know that is ready for the moment. You cannot have your resume converted when you land here. It needs to be well in advance so that you can prepare. If you know that this is the kind of job that you want to be featured for, go and have a look. I had a great example of a marketing person that I chatted to and saying, okay, she's thinking, she knows that it's going to be 6 months before they can even think about landing. So what can she do in the meantime? She needs to start looking for a job. I said, it doesn't really help you looking for a job now. Why don't you sharpen up your skills? So then we started having a look at your skills and saying, okay, great. What's big in Canada at the moment is digital marketing. Saying, okay, great. So go and specialize. Take the 6 months to a year or whatever the case might be while you've got the delay, and go and skill yourself up on the digital side so that you are more employable. But go and have a look, what keywords are the people putting on LinkedIn that's looking for people in digital marketing at the moment? What are those keywords so that you can see where the people have studied, what they're doing? Start connecting with those companies that's employing those people. That's when the job opportunities would start coming in, because you've connected in that way.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other big things is that, going back to the resume and the details in that, is that if you've got a friend that writes CVs or resumes, there's no point in finding somebody that isn't Canadian, or at least living here, that understands how that works. So that's number one. That's why Simeon, brilliant, great idea. The other one is in terms of that networking. I found when I first got here, I was like, oh, I come from a corporate sales background in construction. So I started looking for jobs doing that. A very nice lady at a recruitment office helped me rewrite my CV. So that was cool. And I had a couple of interviews. But what I slowly began to realize, and I started feeling, sort of getting down on myself about it, was in South Africa, I had all my cheerleaders, right? People that can refer you. Oh, I know of a job. Andrea would be great, or Mel would be great for this. You don't have those cheerleaders when you come here anymore. And that's why all you hang on to is LinkedIn and networking and talking to people. And so the more people you meet, the more people can refer you. And that's why, to your point, absolutely start networking, make it happen. Make sure that you've got coffee dates happening by the time you land here. Hey, Mel, can we meet for coffee? This is what I'm interested in. Can you link me with these people? What sort of groups can I get onto on Facebook that are sales related or veterinary related or whatever?
Yeah,
and then still break it down even further. If you're a vet or whatever, find out veterinary stuff in Facebook, but then specific to the area you might be living in. So yes, get connected.
Yeah, I think, and a tip here for when you are getting connected, and when you speak to the Canadians or the South Africans in Canada, if you start with that, because that's typically where we would start, is if you look at LinkedIn, figure out how LinkedIn works.
Yes.
If your resume is on there, and you go through getting that updated, and you start networking with the people and figuring out what it says there. Here's the tip, okay? The people that is in Canada at the moment, and as harsh as this might sound, they are busy. Okay. And if you're saying to them why you want to have coffee dates with them, then you need to have yourself up to date.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you're going here, it's you want to be connected, cut off immediately. You send people your resume in the old format. People here cannot help you. So you know what will happen is you're going to that person's bottom of the pile priority list in any case when you send out that invite to connect with them, because they say the person has not done the effort to update the resume. So I can't even send him or phone my mate up and say, you know what, here's a great South African, he'll fit this job perfectly. Won't you have a look? We cannot even start with that process because it just shows that you've not done the homework to get there. So there are a couple of steps that you need to take in place. Speak to the people that's gone through the process. Speak to people like yourself. Speak to people at Howzit that's done that. Speak to your friend that's in Canada. Start doing those things. But you're not, I can tell you this, you are not going to find a job with a South African CV. And also South Africans, lastly, South Africans tend to be, we can do everything. We're a jack of everything. I'm sure you've heard that we can do everything perfectly. Here, specialization is key. Specialization all the time.
100.
So if you are thinking about coming to Canada within the next year or two, and you've got 12 to 18 months, go and specialize. You want to know something, go and specialize in something specific, and you'll find it's much easier to find a job. When you change your resume, it says, how have you done this? How well have you exceeded in this? What changes have you made in that specific career area? They don't really care that you can add this and that and that. They don't. They really don't. They really want to know how you can take this and you can change it and what you've done. How can you prove it? How did you improve the processes? How did you save the company money? Those are the things. But that's when when you speak to someone that is doing resumes that can help you. Also, important is, do you need a cover letter or not? Those are things that we discuss. Kind of follow the blogs that that gets written out there, because they're Canadian specific. They are not world specific. They are not. If you're looking for a job in New Zealand, there might be some tidbits, or job in America that kind of you can pick up on that.
Yeah.
But this is specifically for South Africans and for people wanting to immigrate to Canada. How to adjust yourself, how to write that cover letter so that you think as a Canadian would think, and would put your resume at the top of his list and say, let me look at this guy. Why would I think he would be, I can connect him in certain ways. That's what I would recommend.
100%, Mel. Right on point.
So that's great. So you're saying that your next video, or is it your blog, right? That's coming out now in the next few days.
Both, actually. So I've written the blog and I thought I'd release the video first. I recorded yesterday. I'm busy stitching it now, and I should have it out by today. So all the information is on there. But the blog, I find my audience loves the video, and then there's some people afterwards they want to go to the blog, because specifically with that video on schooling, you actually need to read through it slowly. There's a lot of information. There's so many links, and there's so, there's just a lot of information. So the blog will work really well for that. So that should be out in the next 2 or 3 days. I think I get loads and loads of questions of people asking me the same things. I think these are pretty much the top 5. I want to just add one more thing. I met a South African lady in the grocery store the other day, and she said to me, "Oh, you, Andrea, I watch your videos and blah, blah, blah." And I'm all embarrassed because this is so new to me. I only wish I was like Justin Bieber. But anyway, stop laughing. Okay. So the thing is, she said to me she's got the best job in the world. And I said to her, what are you doing? And she said, I work at Starbucks. I said, you're kidding me. I said, I want to work at Starbucks. So what I want to say about this is that you can do anything you want to do when you come to Canada. There's opportunity. If you really are hungry, you will find a job. If you work at Starbucks, you can go to Walmart. My daughter's bored with COVID. She's in grade 12. She's literally done. So she's ready to go to university. She applied a week ago at Metro at the grocery store. 2 days later, she got the job. She's getting a great rate, probably danger pay, for working with COVID. But she's bored. You can get a job. It might not always be the job that you want. If you coming in with this cool title and whatever, if you really want to live in Canada, sometimes it's just about getting your foot in the door. And I think if I can encourage you and give you any advice, get your foot in the door, get a job, earn some dollars, and slowly people get to know you. Maybe your networking, it might take a bit longer, but give yourself some time. Cut yourself some slack. Get your foot in the door, start working, meet people, let them get to meet you. And then eventually you'll probably move into something that is more in line with what you want to do.
I think that's great advice. You've got it spot on. I think we all want to work for Starbucks, for that flat white.
Totally.
Not cheap in South Africa, in Canada. Yeah, we live.
You're battled to find flat whites in Canada, unless you're in downtown, because they are like the gastronomy of food is downtown Toronto. But yeah, they're the people who know how to make flat whites. Unless you come visit me, I'll make you one.
I think that's one that we need to do. So it's been great. Thanks so much, Andrea. Thanks for the great tips. We look forward to hearing some more from you. And yeah, absolutely. We'll do another one soon.
Lovely. Can't wait. Thanks so much, everybody. That's great. Thanks, Mel. Appreciate it.
Thank you.